The last salute. The old man shuffled into the courtroom, wrists cuffed, head bowed low beneath a wool cap that had seen too many winters. His posture sagged under the weight of forgotten years, and his dark-lined face looked carved from weather itself creased by cold nights and harsher memories. The clerk barely looked up from her desk as she said, "State your name for the record." A pause. Then, in a voice that trembled with both weariness and resolve, he replied, "Michael Grant, Staff Sergeant, United States Marine Corps." No one in the room flinched. No gasps, no whispers, just the indifferent rhythm of bureaucracy continuing. The bailiff, the prosecutor, the courtroom spectators, none of them knew the name. None of them had any idea what was about to unfold. Judge Rebecca Langley, mid-50s with a sharp mind and an even sharper gavel, glanced down at the case file. Her pen hovered over the pages as she flipped through routine violations and citations until something caught her eye. Her hand paused mid-page. Her breath faltered. That name. Her complexion paled. Michael Grant, the very man who had once saved her younger brother's life on the war-scarred streets of Fallujah. The same Michael Grant who had vanished in a silence, lost to the shadows of post-war America. She stared at the file as if it were a ghost, returning not with chains, but with truth. Michael sat slouched on the defense bench, swallowed by a military coat 2 sizes too big. It hung off his shoulders like the years, silent and sagging. The courtroom lights were bright, sterile, revealing the roadmaps of time and trauma etched into his face. Once, he had worn dress blues with pride, medals glinting under sunlight and sweat. Now, he sat in thrift store clothes from a shelter, waiting for judgment for the crime of survival. Case number 19C, the bailiff called. City of Elmsworth versus Michael Grant. Charges: disturbing the peace, trespassing, resisting arrest. Michael rose slowly, knees popping, spine stiff from old wounds and older winters. Vietnam, then Iraq. Wounds visible and hidden. He had carried them all without complaint for decades. The prosecutor stood, a young, sharply dressed man with ambition in his eyes and a rehearsed tone in his voice. "Your Honor, Mr. Grant has repeatedly ignored warnings from local businesses. The owner of Main Street Cafe has filed 3 complaints just this month." He left out the part where Michael never panhandled, never asked for help. He only sat behind the alley vent on bitter nights, eating the half sandwiches the kind-hearted cook would leave him. That cook known Michael since childhood. His father had served with him. That part wasn't in the file. Then came the officer's testimony. Found him loitering at 11:47 p.m., refused to vacate when ordered. Michael hadn't refused. He'd asked softly for 5 more menu testo, finished the sandwich the cook had left. But back then, his words hadn't mattered. They still didn't. "Your Honor," the prosecutor pressed, "this is his 3rd violation this year. The city recommends 30 days of community service and a no trespass order for the downtown district." The judge's eyebrows arched. That would effectively banish Michael from the 4th Street shelter, from the community center, from the only places that offered food and warmth. It would sentence him to the open concrete in the coldest part of the year. "Mr. Grant," Judge Langley addressed him finally, her voice careful. "Do you have legal representation today?" Michael shook his head. His public defender had been called into another courtroom for a time-sensitive matter. "Would you like to speak on your own behalf?" she asked, removing her glasses. He cleared his throat. "No excuses, ma'am. I just needed to stay warm." "Why that specific location?" she asked, tone neutral but eyes probing. He hesitated. "Jimmy, a cook, sometimes leaves me food. His dad served with me. Desert Storm." "Your service?" she asked again, even though she already knew the answer. Michael stood a little straighter. "United States Marine Corps, 1976 to 2006. Staff Sergeant, 2nd Battalion, 8th Marines. Iraq." The courtroom quieted, sensing something shifting beneath the surface. Judge Langley made a small note, then paused again, eyes lingering on the page. Before she could speak, the courtroom doors opened. A man in a tailored navy suit stepped in, briefcase in hand, walking with calm purpose. He approached the defense table, opened the case, and turned to the judge. Your Honor, James Everett, I've just been retained to represent Mr. Grant. Michael blinked in confusion. He hadn't contacted anyone, couldn't afford an attorney, especially not one in leather shoes and a silk tie. Judge Langley narrowed her eyes. This is highly irregular. The court was not informed of any new representation. It was a last-minute arrangement, Your Honor. I respectfully request a short recess to consult with my client. She studied him, then nodded. Court will recess for 15 minutes. Michael leaned toward Everett, whispering, I don't have the money for this. Everett smiled softly. You won't need it. My firm Langley, Everett & Coli's take your case pro bono. Michael's brow furrowed. Langley? Yes. Everett nodded. Same as the judge. In chambers, Judge Langley sat at her desk, staring at a photo that had never left her drawer. Her brother, Lieutenant Jeremy Langley, stood beside her in his dress blues. His arm draped proudly across her shoulder, his face still full of life. Beside it sat his last letter from Iraq. In it, he'd written of a firefight in Fallujah, pinned down under heavy fire. Thought it was over. But then Staff Sergeant Grant charged in, dragged me out, kept the squad alive. If I ever come home, it'll be because of him. 2 weeks later, Jeremy was killed by an IED. She remembered the funeral, the folded flag, the Marine who approached her afterward. He saved my life, the man had said, then disappeared. She never forgot his name, Michael Grant. Years later, she tried to find him, but the military said he'd been discharged, his file sealed after a severe TBI and PTSD diagnosis. Now he was here. A knock. Everett stepped inside. Rebecca. Is it him? Yes, she whispered. The man who saved Jeremy. Back in the courtroom, Judge Langley returned with practiced calm, but those who knew her might have noticed the slight tremor in her hand. Mr. Everett, she said, has your client made a decision? Yes, Your Honor. We request dismissal of all charges. Mr. Grant was not trespassing, but attempting to survive in dangerous weather, with implied permission from staff. The prosecutor opened his mouth, but Langley raised a hand. She turned to Michael. Mr. Grant, were you present in Fallujah on April 17, 2004? Michael's face shifted. Slowly, he nodded. Yes, ma'am. Convoy ambushed near the city's western edge. Did you rescue a wounded officer, Lieutenant Jeremy Langley, under fire? He blinked. Langley, yes. Young, brave. Refused to leave another Marine behind. I dragged him out. He kept yelling at me to save the others. Took 2 rounds doing it. A silver-haired man in the gallery stood abruptly. That's him, he declared. That's Staff Sergeant Grant. I was there. He saved 6 of us. Gasps. Order, Langley said softly. The gavel hit, but without steel. Michael looked down, visibly uneasy. The veteran continued. I saw with my own eyes. Carter Sory Grant ran, through gunfire like death didn't exist. The prosecutor tried to object, but Langley cut in. This is relevant. The court will recess for 10 minutes. When she returned, Judge Langley wasn't alone. 3 Marines entered, a full colonel, a master sergeant, and a young corporal carrying a wooden case. At the sight of the uniforms, Michael stood, posture automatically locking into parade rest. Colonel David Hines stepped forward. Staff Sergeant Michael Grant, the Department of the Navy has updated your file under the Veterans Reconsideration Initiative. Your commendation has been upgraded. The corporal opened the case. In recognition of valor and extraordinary heroism under enemy fire on April 17, 2004, the Navy Cross is hereby awarded to Staff Sergeant Michael Grant. The courtroom gasped, second only to the Medal of Honor. Michael's jaw clenched. This must be a mistake. I didn't do anything special. No mistake, Sergeant Inesrible. This is long overdue. The gallery stood. Veterans saluted. Even the prosecutor rose to his feet. Langley's voice cracked as she declared, all charges against Staff Sergeant Michael Grant are hereby dismissed. Permanently. Cheers erupted softly. A master sergeant approached Michael. Sir, your VA file has been corrected. You're entitled to full benefits, retroactive. Housing, medical, everything. Everett stepped in, and our firm will make sure you get it all. No red tape this time. From a back, Jimmy, a cafe, Cook stepped forward. My dad told me about a Marine who saved his unit. Said, if you ever meet a man named Michael Grant, you owe him everything. I never knew that man was you. He held out his hand, tears streaming. Michael took it, overwhelmed. Langley stepped down from the bench, closing the space between them. My brother told us what you said to him that day, she said. No Marine gets left behind. Not while I'm breathing. Well, Sergeant Grant, today we return the favor. 2 weeks later, Michael stood in a small apartment veteran housing. Clean, warm, quiet. On the wall, a shadow box held his Navy Cross, Purple Hearts, and the medals he thought lost. A knock. It was Judge Langley. Not in robes. Just Olivia. I brought something, she said, handing him a small box. Inside were Jeremy's letters. This one's dated the day after you saved him. Michael unfolded the letter, hands trembling. Mom, Dad, he read aloud. I'm safe. Thanks to Staff Sergeant Grant. That man ran through bullets to get me out. Refused to leave. Said not on my watch. Michael's voice cracked. He wrote about you a lot, Olivia said gently. Said you were the Marine he looked up to. Michael looked away. I'm not a hero. That's what heroes always say, she replied softly. Then added, Jeremy died trying to live up to your example. That hit deeper than any bullet. You didn't fail him, she whispered. You gave us time we wouldn't have had. And now we give some back to you. They sat in silence, the snow falling gently outside. Then Michael spoke. For years I thought no one remembered. We did, Olivia said. We always did. And in that quiet, something broken began to heal, not just in Michael Grant, but in a nation learning to remember those it forgot. Because some heroes don't ask for glory. They just need to be seen.